You wake up foggy, reactive, depleted. You blame your alarm, your mattress, your genetics. But the problem isn't happening when you open your eyes. The damage was done 8 hours earlier, while you were scrolling through your phone at 11:30, telling yourself, just one more video. Originating from sleep architecture research, we now know that morning grogginess is not a starting condition. It's a neurochemical debt inherited from the prior night's failure to clear metabolic waste. Your brain has a literal washing cycle called the glymphatic system that flushes toxins during deep sleep. And if you sabotage that cycle with bad pre-sleep decisions, you wake up swimming in yesterday's cognitive garbage, leaving one big question. How do you stop inheriting brain fog every single morning? You live in a world obsessed with morning routines. Cold plunges at 5 a.m., structured journals, green smoothies with adaptogens. These are all damage control. They're reactive attempts to fix neurological damage already done by poor sleep architecture. And here's the kicker. They don't address the root variable. A study by Leprol in 1997 found that a single night of disrupted sleep raises your next evening cortisol by 37 to 45%. That means one bad night doesn't just ruin tomorrow morning, it creates a stress spiral that lasts into the following evening, making it harder to sleep again the next night. You're not tired because you woke up early. You're tired because you never gave your brain permission to shut down the night before. And the cycle compounds every 24 hours until you feel like you're thinking through wet cement. So, what actually works? Let's talk about the 3 night habits that quietly rewire your brain for peak productivity, starting with the one that takes 5 minutes and eliminates half your mental noise. Overnight habit. 1 is the shutdown ritual, and it's built on something called the Zeigarnik effect, discovered by a psychologist who noticed that waiters remembered incomplete orders but forgot completed ones immediately. Your brain prioritizes unfinished tasks for processing, which sounds useful, until you realize it does this. While you're trying to sleep, those intrusive thoughts about the email you didn't send, the project you haven't started, the argument you need to resolve. Those aren't random. They're your brain refusing to enter deep sleep because it thinks you're still in danger of forgetting something critical. Masacampo and Baumeister proved this in 2011. They ran a study where people wrote down unfinished tasks before bed and compared them to people who journaled about completed tasks. The group that offloaded their open loops fell asleep significantly faster and reported better sleep quality because writing the task down tricks your brain into releasing responsibility it no longer has to keep that loop active overnight, burning energy and fragmenting your sleep cycles. Here's how you do it. Grab a piece of paper, not your phone, and write down every unfinished task you're aware of. It doesn't have to be detailed, just specific enough that your brain recognizes it as captured. Then write your exact first action for tomorrow morning. Not wake up early, not be productive. Your literal first physical step, like open laptop and reply to Sarah's email. This removes decision costs the next morning and creates what researchers call an action anchor. You're not waking up into a fog of possibilities, you're waking up into a preloaded instruction. And your prefrontal cortex doesn't have to burn willpower figuring out where to start. This ritual takes 5 minutes, but it eliminates cognitive interference from open loops and frees up the mental RAM your brain needs to enter deep restorative sleep, the kind that actually clears adenosine and metabolic toxins instead of letting them pile up into next morning's brain fog. Habit 2 is the digital sunset, and it's based on hard data about melatonin suppression. Blue light exposure from screens 2 hours before bed suppresses melatonin by 23%, pushing your brain's recovery phase hours into the next day. That means if you're scrolling until 11, your brain doesn't start producing sleep hormones until 1 a.m. And if you have to wake up at 6, you're cutting off the repair cycle before it finishes, leaving you with what feels like a cognitive hangover. But it's not just about blue light, it's about stimulation. Your brain operates in different wave states: beta waves during focus, alpha waves during relaxation, delta waves during deep sleep. When you're watching fast-cut videos, reading enraging news, or arguing in comment sections, you're forcing your brain to stay in high-frequency beta waves, right up until you close your eyes. And then you wonder why it takes 40 minutes to fall asleep. Your brain doesn't have an off switch, it has a dimmer, and you need to give it time to transition. The rule is simple: no screens 60 minutes before bed. And I know that sounds impossible, so let's make it concrete. At 9 p.m., you plug your phone into a charger across the room, not next to your bed, across the room. Then you pick one low-stimulation analog activity: reading a physical book, listening to a podcast without looking at the screen, doing a simple stretch routine. Cleaning up your space, the goal is not to be bored. The goal is to reset dopamine sensitivity by seeking strategic boredom. At night, you're training your brain to find high-focus work rewarding the next morning instead of needing constant novelty to stay engaged. Researchers call this alpha wave transition, and it's the bridge between alert and asleep. Skip it, and your brain stays stuck in performance mode, burning through the prefrontal cortex. Resources you'll need tomorrow for decision-making and creative problem-solving. One study found that people who turned off electronics 60 minutes before bed fell asleep 12 minutes faster and woke up reporting significantly better executive function the next day. That's the difference between starting your morning sharp versus spending 2 hours trying to remember what focus feels like. Habit 3 is the thermal drop trick, and it's built on your body's core temperature rhythm. Your brain uses temperature as a sleep signal. When your core temperature drops, your body interprets that as time to enter deep sleep, and when it rises, you wake up. This is why you sleep better in a cold room and why you feel groggy in a hot one. The optimal range is 65 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything warmer and you spend the night in fragmented light sleep that doesn't clear metabolic waste or consolidate memories. But here's the hack. You can trigger that temperature drop artificially by taking a warm bath or shower 90 minutes before bed. When you get into hot water, your body sends blood to the surface to cool you down, and when you get out, your core temperature drops rapidly, mimicking the natural signal for sleep onset. Studies show this can help you fall asleep 10 to 15 minutes faster and spend more time in deep, slow-wave sleep, the kind that flushes adenosine and restores cognitive function. If you don't have time for a bath, even washing your face and hands with warm water creates a smaller version of the same effect. Pair this with a room that's actually cold, not comfortable cold, and you create the ideal thermal environment for deep sleep. Your brain will stay in delta waves longer, which means better memory consolidation, better toxin clearance, and less of that inherited neurochemical debt that makes every morning feel like you're starting from behind. Now, let's talk about what happens when you ignore all 3 of these habits, because the consequences aren't abstract, they're measurable, and they compound fast. Skip the shutdown ritual, and your brain spends the night trying to process open loops instead of entering deep sleep. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep long enough, but because your sleep was shallow and fragmented. Ignore the digital sunset, and you suppress melatonin by nearly a quarter, pushing your entire sleep phase later, even if you go to bed on time. Your brain isn't ready, and you lie there for an hour wondering why you can't fall asleep. Then you grab your phone to pass the time and make it worse. Skip the thermal drop, and your core temperature stays elevated, keeping you in light sleep all night. You might get 7 hours in bed, but only 4 hours of actual restorative sleep. And the next morning, you wake up feeling like you got hit by a truck, because neurologically, you kinda did. And here's the part most people miss. These aren't isolated mistakes. They're upstream variables that determine everything downstream. Your morning routine, your focus, your mood, your ability to handle stress. All of it is shaped by what you did the night before. A study on caffeine timing found that consuming caffeine even 6 hours before bed can cut your deep sleep in half. That means your afternoon coffee at 3 p.m. is still in your system at 9, and it's quietly stealing the cognitive recovery you need to think clearly tomorrow. Alcohol is even worse. Even moderate consumption suppresses REM sleep by up to 30%. And REM is where your brain does creative problem solving and emotional regulation. Skip it, and you wake up mentally rigid, unable to connect ideas or regulate frustration. The 10-3-2-1 rule is built on this. No caffeine 10 hours before bed. No food 3 hours before bed. No work 2 hours before bed. No screens 1 hour before bed. Follow that sequence, and you're not just improving sleep, you're removing the variables that create next-day cognitive debt. But let's say you do everything right. You shut down your tasks, you turn off your phone, you cool your room, and you still wake up groggy. That's when you need to check for hidden disruptors, like internal alarm clock stress. If you go to bed anxious about tomorrow's meeting, your brain releases cortisol hours before your alarm actually goes off. You wake up in fight or flight mode before anything bad has even happened. The fix is deciding your first action the night before, so your brain doesn't spend the night rehearsing worst-case scenarios. Another hidden disruptor is social jet lag. If you go to bed at midnight on weekends and 10 p.m. on weekdays, you're giving yourself a 2-hour time zone shift twice a week. Your body never stabilizes, and Monday morning feels like cognitive jet lag because biochemically it is. The fix is boring, but it works. Same bedtime, within 30 minutes every night, even weekends. Your circadian rhythm will lock in and you'll start waking up before your alarm naturally alert instead of artificially jolted. And here's the thing that most productivity advice gets backwards. You can't fix bad sleep with a better morning routine. You can't cold plunge your way out of a 37% cortisol spike. You can't journal your way past memory consolidation sabotage. Morning routines are valuable, but only if you're starting from a neurochemical baseline that isn't already depleted. If you wake up in debt, no amount of optimization will get you to surplus. You're just doing damage control and calling it productivity. The real leverage is at night, when you decide whether tomorrow starts sharp or starts broken. The 3 habits, shutdown ritual, digital sunset, thermal drop, are not optional add-ons. They're the minimum viable input for cognitive output. And the best part is, they don't require willpower. They require decision architecture. You don't need to resist your phone at 11 p.m. If you plugged it in across the room at 9, you don't need to force yourself to fall asleep if you offloaded your open loops on paper. You don't need to fight your body's temperature rhythm if you took a warm shower 90 minutes earlier. You're not fighting biology, you're designing the environment that makes the right choice automatic. And that's the difference between people who wake up ready and people who wake up recovering. One group treats sleep as a passive accident, the other treats it as an active variable they control. And the gap between those two groups compounds every single night until it looks like talent or genetics, when really it's just 3 decisions made 8 hours earlier. So here's the test. Tonight, before you go to bed, write down your unfinished tasks. Turn off your phone at a specific time and take a warm shower 90 minutes before you want to sleep. Then, tomorrow morning, notice whether you wake up foggy or clear, reactive or intentional, depleted or ready. If you feel different, you just found the variable that's been controlling your productivity the entire time. And if you feel the same, check your room temperature. Check your caffeine cutoff. Check whether you're actually following the protocol or just thinking about it. Because the research is clear. The brain you wake up with tomorrow is being built tonight. And every night you ignore that is another morning you inherit the debt instead of the dividends. Your peak productivity isn't waiting for you in the morning. It's being decided right now, 8 hours before you open your eyes. And the only question left is whether you're going to keep blaming your alarm or start controlling the variables that actually matter.